Well, welcome back, everybody. This is another new video here that I would like to start doing also every week towards the end of my night and after the um, kind of the game. All the games have ended, obviously, and just kind of getting an idea of what I got right and wrong. Let's see what I got wrong. I know I got a couple wrong this week, but I'm going to go into it, talk about who won, who lost, what is the road ahead for some of these teams. So let's get into it. And going at number 25 now, right away, it's number 25, James Madison, the Dukes. And they won a close one. They won a close one. Um, really much of a dogfight for them. A lot of pretty much majority of the game. It was a solid game. They beat Old Dominion 30-27 to move to 8-0 and most likely will make another solid jump in the rankings. And obviously, I got this one right. I was hoping. Um, I hope I see this team get into a solid bowl game. Unfortunately, I don't think they will. It's a damn shame because, looking at their schedule, James Madison, they've got Georgia State next. They are 6-2. This is their pretty much their next game against Georgia State is their next probably the best team they're facing for the rest of the season for them. Because after that, they play UConn, who are just a joke at 1-7, Appalachian State, who are 4-4, and then Coastal Carolina, who is 5-3. McLeod had an excellent game this week. He was 27 of 40, 340 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had those 2 interceptions, but overall, he had a really good game. Reggie Brown, he had a solid game himself with another just ridiculous stats here. 9 catches, 142 yards. Elijah Sarrett had another good game as well. 8 catches, 139 yards. They ran the ball okay, but obviously it was through the passing game where James Madison were solid all the way through. And they won a close one, 30-27. Old Dominion gave them a hell of a fight, but obviously the talent was just, was just too much for Old Dominion. So 1-0 on my predictions here. Next up, and holy crap, what a game this was. Let me tell you, I was not expecting. I was expecting at least a good game for USC, but I was not expecting something like this. USC took on Cal. Cal played their asses off. I did not expect Cal to really stay in this game. I really didn't. And they were down big early, came back, took a lead, and they just couldn't hold on. Turnovers just were the deciding factor here. 4 turnovers, 3 fumbles. Even though USC were doing their best to give them a game. 11 penalties for them. They had trouble running the ball, but obviously this was just a game for Caleb Williams. This was tailor-made for Caleb Williams to do his thing. Just looking at Caleb Williams, 23 of 40, 369 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Taj Washington had a good game, 5 catches, 102 yards. Just, man, geez, what a game. Just a back and forth game, a crazy game, Pac-12 game. It's a shame that the stadium was basically empty for this game. Big ballsy move from Cal. Why not? They have nothing to lose. They were 3-4 before they lost this game. They had nothing to lose. Why not? USC had everything to lose. They're set. If they lost this game, I probably see them falling out of the top 25. Thinking about it, the only thing that can probably keep them in the top 25 is the name USC, the brand of USC keeping them in it. And man, just what a stop on that 2-point conversion on the final play that really ended it for him. Next, so I was able to get that one right, but boy, I wasn't too confident after a while. But damn, what a game! What a fourth quarter. Next up, UCLA took on Colorado, and this was really a defensive battle until late in the end of the game. I mean, both defenses were playing hard all game long. Uh, Hang on, I'm trying to get the stats up. UCLA would end up beating Colorado 28-16. It was I know the line when I at least I know the line flipped a lot, as it usually does, but I didn't think UCLA was going to win this big by 17. I did not think that at all. I knew they were going to win, but I thought it would be a closer game, and I was right. I was right. Um, just an all around solid effort from that defense. I mean, again, Colorado weak up front. Their offensive line, when really facing the pressure, they just fall apart. You saw it in Oregon where they could not protect Sanders. They could not protect Shador Sanders. And again, today was one of those days. 7 sacks. 7 sacks for the UCLA defense. Man, what a game. Shador Sanders still had a decent game for, well, I guess for an average quarterback, I'd say he had a good game, or decent game. But 27 to 43 for him, 217, 1 touchdown. They had they could not run the football. I mean, Colorado could not run the football, but again, we weren't surprised when it came to that because we all know that UCLA has a pretty good defense, pretty solid defense. Um, just Unfortunately, the Colorado is still just they need a full year. Dion needs a full year of recruiting and a full year into the transfer window here. Transfer window. Sorry, the transfer portal. Sorry, folks. Transfer portal into. I mean, to see what he can get. He's still a year, maybe 2 years away from really competing for a college football playoff spot right now. He needs a couple years under his belt in the big Power Five conference, and just in college football. I mean, that's no disrespect to the HBCUs, of course, but um, he just needs a couple more years to build a solid program there in Colorado, and I hope he stays around for the long term. He seems to be the guy that is willing to stay there long term, so we'll see. We'll see. But UCLA moves to 6-2. I see them either stay. I see them definitely taking definitely moving up a couple spots, especially after the couple of huge losses that we saw this week. Just huge losses that I did not expect. Coming up is another team that I definitely picked and I got right, and Tulane. Tulane had a great game today. It was a close one. Give Rice the respect that they deserve. They stayed. They stayed in it. They Tulane would beat Rice 30-28. Rice would score late in the fourth quarter, but unfortunately, they just could not do anything after that. They just could not pull off the upset. But I mean, a great game overall. Really, Tulane took an early lead. They were up big at halftime, but Rice fought back. So you got to give them that credit there. You got to give them credit. Um, it's also just football, man. Next up is one that I definitely got wrong. Unfortunately, also I just can't stand them. But number 21, Tennessee, they moved to 6-2. Kentucky unfortunately drops to 5-3. I mean, Kentucky just had trouble in this game. I mean, they could not stop the run. They could not stop the run, which is crazy because I mean, Kentucky has been decent at stopping the run this year, but I mean, they got ran all over today. 253 yards on the ground from Tennessee. Milton had a very, very efficient day, 18-21, 220 plus yards passing. They just couldn't stop him. They couldn't stop him, and they scored. They got a field goal at the end. Tried to do something to get a stop, but they just couldn't stop him. And give credit to Tennessee for running out the clock and making those big plays at the end of the game to hold off a potential comeback. I mean, they got the ball with about 4:24 left in the game, and that was it. I mean, wow. I mean, Kentucky. they fought hard. They came back into it. They were hanging around. They were hanging around, but they just couldn't pull it off. So Kentucky had definitely my first wrong prediction of the um, top 25. So that's so 4-1 right now for me. Next up is definitely one that I got right, and I mean Louisville. Um, man, Duke. Duke, what a fall off. I mean, that was just horrible today. I mean, Louisville definitely beat the spread. I thought they had 2 weeks ago before Duke played Florida State. I thought that they were kind of in trouble because of the injuries to the offense. They're struggling on offense. I mean, their defense was pretty solid, but I mean, their defense really hasn't had at that point, besides Notre Dame, they really didn't see any top tier offenses. And last few weeks, it has showed. I mean, granted, I don't want to bash the defense too much because when the offense is struggling and when the offense is not doing anything to get down the field, the defense is going to get gassed, and that's what happened. That's what's happened the last few weeks for Duke. I mean, you can have a great defense all you want, but if your team is, I mean, if they're just not, if your offense is not staying on the field for long periods of time, it's going to be tough for your defense to hold. And I mean, that's what happened today. Louisville shut out Duke 23-0. Riley Leonard had a horrible game, just a putrid game. 9 of 23, 121 yards and a pick. Um, man, just and again, Jawar Jordan. Man, I swear this guy. If he played at another program, if he played in the SEC, he would be in the running for a possible. He would be at least named as a Heisman candidate. I mean, this guy is ridiculous. He is an unbelievable player. Unbelievable. I mean, 89 carries this year. I think this is before today. 89 carries on the season, 660 yards, 7 yards a carry, 8 touchdowns. I mean, just a solid guy, a solid player. And again, and obviously he has a receiving touchdown this year. Um, he had 800 yards last year. And I mean, and only 4 touchdowns. So he's definitely exceeded expectations this year. And if he played at another program, he'd be in the minds of a lot of college football fans. Even if he was in the Big Ten, he would be in the minds of college football fans as one of the best running backs in the country. So Louisville with a huge win over Duke. Um, Duke, unfortunately, if they are lucky to stay in the top 25, I see them maybe being 25. But again, the last few weeks have just been really rough for them. So I think, in my opinion, I see them dropping out of the top 25 completely. Next up is another one I got wrong. My second pick I got wrong, and that is the Air Force and Colorado State. Colorado State, what a game that was. I mean, not just the type of game that was played, because I honestly thought Colorado State had a chance. I mean, I really did. And just what a game it was. I mean, it was snowy, it was cold, it was really cool to see on TV. I mean, it's October and you're already seeing people making snowmen in the stands just by how much it was snowing. But I mean, thinking about it, for a team like Air Force who run the ball very consistently, and I mean, it was tailor made for them to win this game, and they did. And they did. They would win 30-13. Blowout victory. Colorado State drops to 3-5. Air Force would probably be. They would. I see them jumping up higher. Definitely in the top 15. They're definitely in the top 15. So definitely one I got wrong there. Here's another one I got wrong, and honestly, I did not see this coming. It's North Carolina, man. I mean, what is going on there? It's just a huge loss for them. I mean, damn, 46-42. They drop. They fall to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, what a game! Just what a game! Unbelievable. I can't believe they blew this game. I can't believe going into the fourth quarter, UNC had control of this game, 35-24, but just, I mean, a huge run by Dante Smith, 70 yards, and then Haynes King, who is really becoming a dark horse as amongst the another great young quarterback in the ACC. I mean, he had a great game today, 23 of 30, 287 yards, 4 touchdowns, only 1 pick on the day. Another good game for Drake May, but man, you got to feel for this guy because if man, 17 to 25, 310 yards, 2 touchdowns. Another solid game for Drake May. Hampton had another great game on the ground, 29 carries, 153 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Dante Smith had 22 carries himself for Georgia Tech, 178 yards, and a touchdown. Just a back and forth affair. Third down efficiency was ridiculous in this game. Georgia Tech put up 600 yards, 350 yards on the ground. Outrageous stats here in this game. UNC struggled with penalties, 8 penalties on the day. Really only one turnover each, a fumble for North Carolina, and Georgia Tech had had threw the interception. But I mean, just what a back and forth game, a shootout, and it's just unfortunately just one of those days where UNC just could not pull it off. So I thought UNC would win this game. I thought they would come back with kind of a fire under their ass after they lost to a 1-win Virginia team. Thought they would come back and just be like, okay, we're not messing around with this. We're gonna be better. We're gonna be better in this game. And damn, I was wrong. I was wrong. Defensively, they fell apart. They honestly fell apart, and that there's North Carolina, I think, will definitely stay in the top 25. But looking at their schedule ahead, actually, let's see what they got. They have Campbell next week, which uh, is a win, should be a win, better be a win. Then they have Duke at home, which also should be a win. They have Clemson on the road, which I mean, I don't care if Clemson is 4-4. That's a tough game. Uh, the other Death Valley, tough place to play, and then NC State. So I mean, if they really mess this up, I mean, you're looking at 2 more losses on the schedule for North Carolina. They have to finish strong to get a good bowl game. They have to. They have to. Starting next week. Next week is a perfect way to correct the mistakes that they've made the last few weeks. Campbell's 4-4, but who the hell are they? Definitely a tune-up game for them. They just got to come back and they got to play better and be prepared for the Duke game. Let's see, and who knows what's going to happen with Duke? Maybe they come back and possibly. I mean, maybe they come back and improve on offense and they shock North Carolina. I guess it's just something we're gonna have to wait and see. Next up, obviously Mizzou. They had a bye, and they play Georgia next week. And I'm sorry, I'm picking Georgia. Georgia is ridiculous. Next up is number 15 LSU. I see them probably staying where they're at. I think Mizzou definitely moves up, being 7-1, especially with some of the teams that lost, like Utah and the way they lost. I think LSU or Mizzou definitely moves up into the top 15. I think they maybe I see them maybe at like 12th or 11th. LSU, obviously, they also had a bye. They take on Bama next week, and a huge game for them. Huge game for them. Huge game. They can really play spoiler and play spoiler for Bama, because if Bama loses this game and the way the schedule is looking for Ole Miss wins out. They take the SEC West, and if Bama loses next week, that's huge. That is huge, 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 huge. That means you're probably not going to be seeing them fighting for be in the SEC title game. We might be seeing Georgia and Ole Miss in the SEC title game, which, I mean, being an SEC fan myself and just knowing the coaching history, the Nick Saban tree, how ridiculously long it is. I mean, Kirby Smart um, versus Lane Kiffin. That's a solid SEC title game. I'm not saying I'm going to be cheering for LSU, but I mean, the way it's looking like right now for the title game ahead, a potential title game for the SEC, I'm excited for it. I mean, it's obviously going to be Georgia in the East, but Georgia and Bama again renewing their hostilities, or even Georgia and Ole Miss. Just huge game for LSU. It's in Tuscaloosa. I don't know. Now, the last few games Bama has played, it's been close, too close for comfort. But like I've said before in a previous video, for this video prior, when I was making my initial predictions, this is the time of year when Bama kind of cleans up all the mistakes they've made throughout the season, especially in September. But LSU has had their number. They beat them last year in a close game at Death Valley on I think a 2-point conversion. So I'm leaning LSU for that game against Bama. So moving on, and Jesus, what a blowout! Notre Dame. I picked Notre Dame. I think I picked them to cover. Quote me if comment if I'm wrong, but I think I picked them to cover, and I mean, yeah, they covered 58-7 the final. Notre Dame over Pitt. Um, I mean, this defense. I mean, I'm leaning towards that this defense might be one of the best defenses in college football. I know that might be a hot take, but the way Notre Dame's defense has been playing these last few weeks in their last few games, I would be very nervous to play them in a bowl game. Very, 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 very nervous. I mean, they only gave up 11 first downs. They gave up a total of 255 yards as a whole, but they forced 5 turnovers, 4 picks. Um, I mean, Sam Hartman struggled, but I mean, his defense. Xavier Watts had two of the interceptions, and I think one of them he returned for a touchdown, I believe. Um, let me just double check here. Jaden Mickey had one. Estime had 3 touchdowns. Just man, definitely a party. It probably was a big party over there in South Bend. So I definitely see the way it's looking right now. I think Notre Dame stays at 14. They hover around 14. Here's one that I definitely got wrong that I did not see coming, and looking at it, seems to me that I need to kind of lay off my hate of Bo Nix, because man, he was on a roll today. That defense also for Oregon was unreal. Was unreal. They stifled that Utah offense in every way, ending their home winning streak of I think 18 straight games. It was 18 straight um, wins at home for Utah, and boy, I was dead wrong on this one. I mean, wow, just a 35-6 victory for Oregon. Oregon probably moves up into the top 5. I I mean, there's definitely 3 guaranteed spots or 4 guaranteed spots. Actually, never mind. I think they move up to 6. But the top 5 is looking pretty solid with Georgia at number 1, Michigan at number 2. I see Florida State jumping up to 3, Ohio State dropping to 4. So Florida State and Ohio State flip-flopping, and then Washington at 5. That's and then maybe Oregon at 6. That's what I'm guessing. That's what I'm predicting right now. But with that being said, I mean, another huge game next week for not really, or not next week, but the week after for Utah. Next week they got Arizona State. I mean, Arizona State is a struggling program right now. Next week, Oregon has Cal, so their defense is going to be put up to the test. Because I mean, Cal today was amazing. Their offense played so well, but granted, USC's defense is straight hot garbage. So um, I'll go more into that this week when it comes to the top 25 predictions videos for week 10. So next up, another kind of a lock pick for me was the Ole Miss game, and they proved it. I mean, 33-7 win over another struggling program, Vanderbilt. They dropped to I think 0-5 in the SEC. Just a miserable season this year for Vandy after a really good year last year for Vanderbilt's term. For Vanderbilt terms, anyway, it was a good year last year. But I mean, Jackson Dart, another solid game for him. I mean, he threw an interception, but Junkins, he's a terror running the football. And looking at Ole Miss's schedule, like I was talking about with Bama, um, outside of the Georgia game, a lot of winnable games, a lot of winnable games. But I think Ole Miss is definitely going to become the biggest LSU fans next week when they take on Bama. Um, so I definitely got this one right. This was kind of one of my locks. It was an obvious pick. Another one I got right, and honestly, I know people were surprised, but I mean, I said it. Arizona has been playing all of their entire schedule hard. I mean, they have been so close so many times. They in every loss they have been within a score. They have been within a score, and they've been able to keep up with a lot of the more talented teams in their conference. And today is another one of those days where they proved it. They I mean, they played a all-around great game, and they won 27-24. They're now 5-3. They scored a game-winning touchdown with about a minute and a half to go. Just great play. Or no, sorry. They scored with 2 minutes to go up by 10, and then Oregon State scored quickly, but obviously could not get the ball back after that. So great game from Arizona. Um, Oregon State, disappointing loss for them as they fall to 6-2. I still definitely see them in the top 25, but they definitely drop below 15. Maybe even, I think they maybe drop even below 20. That's just me, though. Next up was a game that was honestly a lot closer than a lot of people expected, and it was the Penn State Indiana game. Indiana played a hard game today, and they had them. They had them. 24-21. Penn State's QB, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Drew something, I think. Yeah, Drew Alar. He threw his first interception in college football. A record that I think was the most passes. He had over 300 passes to start his college career without throwing an INT, and he threw one today, and it was a huge pick. Uh, Up only 24-21. They threw a pick deep in his own territory, but their defense, Penn State's defense, stepped up, got a stop, only forced a field goal, but then Drew Alar came back, threw a beautiful deep pass, and then again, safety at the end of the game. Penn State's defense stepped up, and they helped their QB. So another one I got right. Next up, number 9 for this week, probably standing where they are, or maybe even I think actually maybe dropping out of the top 10, maybe. But Bama, um, next week they got LSU. Like I said, biggest game of their season. Period. If they lose, they're in trouble because I mean, if they would lose, and I mean either way, if they lose, they're kind of screwed because um trying to figure out. I'm trying to think of their schedule at the top of my head. I don't know if they've played LSU yet, or no, they haven't played LSU yet, obviously. But if LSU were to win against Bama, and then Ole Miss would lose against, actually, no, never mind. Thinking, I'm doing all the calculations in my head, but if Bama would lose to LSU, then Ole Miss is basically okay to lose that Georgia game since they beat LSU, I think, earlier in the season. They beat LSU earlier in the season. Yeah, they did. So either way, they still have that chance to make it to the SEC title game as the representative from the SEC West. So I'm looking at Ole Miss. They if even if they lose to Georgia, they're still okay in a very good position if Alabama were to lose to LSU. So And I honestly, the way LSU has been playing recently, and the way Alabama's offense has been kind of slowing down. Luckily, their defense has been helping them a lot. I'm honestly leaning towards LSU to pull off an upset. Next up is the Texas Longhorns and the BYU Cougars. Texas's defense was basically the reason why they won today. Their offense was struggling. Obviously, Jonathan Brooks had himself another good game. 16 carries, 98 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, I'm looking at Texas's offense right now without Ewers, and they struggle. They look mediocre and average at times. So, and they're definitely focusing heavy on their defense to really bail them out. And looking at their schedule ahead, um, they seem to be I mean, next week is a huge game for them against Kansas State. And after that, it's kind of really smooth sailing for them. I mean, TCU, then Iowa State, and then Texas Tech. So definitely, definitely a huge game for them next week. They need to win out, especially after the Oklahoma loss, which is, man, a game I got wrong. Which is crazy to me because following along with this game, Kansas gave Oklahoma. I mean, Kansas was basically giving the game to Oklahoma at the end of the game. Jason Bean was throwing some really poor interceptions. I mean, he was basically giving Oklahoma the game, but they still managed to get the ball back and they still managed to pull it off. And scoring with under a minute to go, huge win for Kansas in that program as they continue to say, "Hey, we're here." I think maybe Kansas sneaks into the top 25 this week. I think they sneak into the top 25 this week, especially with a couple of teams losing their third game of the year. They're drop. I think they drop or they make their first appearance in the top 25. Next up, kind of another lock for me, but turns out was a little bit of a closer game than usual. But I mean, a shootout for Pac-12. I mean, it's typical. Washington, they go to 8-0. They definitely didn't. I thought they would meet that they would meet that Vegas line. I was definitely wrong. Stanford came to play. Their offense was great. It was a back and forth battle, but just Michael Penix. Michael Penix. What a quarterback. Um, I really hope this guy goes in the first round. I mean, he's an excellent quarterback. Um, but next week, Washington, they have a big game of their own against USC. Washington basically now playing. They are officially in play for for college football playoff spot. They're in play. So let's see what they do. They got big games coming up. I mean, these next 3 weeks are going to tell whether they are legit as a college football playoff and a national championship contender or not. So they got USC next week, then Utah, then Oregon State, and then they host Washington State at home. So huge game for them. Huge few weeks for them. Huge. And also it'll also tell whether if Michael Penix is going to be a first round pick, in my opinion. Next up, Florida State. Florida State, another blowout victory for them over Wake Forest. Wake Forest gave them some trouble early on, but didn't really do anything after that. Unfortunately, Florida State's defense and their offense took over, and they just overpowered them, and Wake Forest couldn't do anything. So, I mean, thinking of it, Florida State, their next few games are Pitt next week, then Miami, North Alabama, and then Florida. So hopefully Florida can play spoiler to FSU in the swamp. Next up, another one I got right. Ohio State over Wisconsin. Wisconsin came to play. It was definitely not. It was right under the Vegas line. So 14-point win for Ohio State, 24-10. Marvin Harrison Jr. had himself another game, 6 catches, 123 yards, 2 touchdowns. Another solid game for him, proving that he's definitely going to be most likely a top 5 pick in the draft. So, now number 2, Michigan. Obviously, I see them staying at number 2. They got Purdue next week. They beat Purdue. They beat Purdue. Their defense is too good to pass up. Then next week, and then at number 1, most likely staying at number 1 for another week. Georgia beat my Gators pretty good today, 43-20. I thought it would be closer because just by the way the Gators have been trending upwards, I thought it would be definitely a closer game, but just not there yet. Just not there yet. Georgia, they're ridiculous on defense. Their offense is honestly, compared to their offenses under Stetson Bennett, their offense is okay, but really the defense is what's going to give them a chance at winning, to pulling off a three-peat. So that's how that's where I'm at. That's it for this video. Looking at it, I had a good week, I'd say. Let's see, 1, 2. I think I got 4 wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I got 5 wrong. Not bad, honestly. Say a decent week. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know what teams do you think are going to make their jump into the top 25. Let me know what you think. What teams are going to be in the top 10 this week. Let me know. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching. See you later this week.